Hello everybody, welcome back to Dee-licious. I'm Dee Dee and today we're going to be making some biscuits. In England, I don't know if they have them anywhere else, but in England we have a shortbread biscuit which has jam in between, which we call jammy dodgers. So this is a similar recipe to that. In my opinion, it's better. My dad is a great fan of jammy dodgers and so that's why I make these. I'm going to be making jam to go into the jammy dodgers. You do not have to do that. You can buy jam and you can just make up the shortbread ready to assemble. But if you do want to find out how to make this, I'm just going to do it quite quick. I'm going to give you an idea of how it's going to look. If you feel like I've gone too quick, I have another video about making a one-pot strawberry jam. So if you feel like I've missed something in this, you can always go and look at that and that will perhaps explain it a little bit more in depth if you feel like you need it. Hopefully you won't, but if you do, it's there. Right, so we're going to be starting off with our pan. We're going to make the jam first so that it will be cooling down whilst we're making the the shortbread. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you what you are going to need for this. You're going to need a pan, obviously. You're going to need a mixing bowl and an electric whisk. It just makes it easier. You don't need it. You can do it by hand if you like. You're going to need corn flour. You're going to need 60 grams of corn flour, 60 grams of icing sugar, and 200 grams. There we go. Got there in the end. 200 grams of plain flour, which I think Americans call all-purpose. Not sure. I always say this and I always forget to look it up. I'm going to have to look it up at some point. You're also going to need 250 grams of your chosen fruit. I'm using raspberries. I sometimes do strawberries instead. Blackberries. You can do lemon curd if you like instead. You're going to need 250 grams of butter. I always use salted. So if you prefer not to, you're going to have to add a little salt in later, but I always just use salted in every recipe I do. And sugar. Oh, you're going to need 250 grams because this is for your jam. We're going to start off by tipping your 250 grams of raspberries into your pan, and I do like to just put just a splash. Little flip. That's just showing my messy kitchen.
It's not that bad.
The illusion is ruined.
It's not that bad. It's not bad. Carry
on. Just a splash of water, just so that when I'm not going over there,
so you can see it. So it's already there.
Just so that you can, the fruit doesn't stick. That's why. And I'm just going to have it on a medium heat. And I'm also going to put a lid on because at this point I want them to stew, because you're going to want to get your raspberry pips out at some point. I'm going to do that probably at this stage. So I'm going to wait for the raspberries to stew, and when they're falling apart, I'm going to put them through a sieve. Use a metal sieve if your fruit is hot. If you haven't got a metal sieve, you're going to have to wait for the fruit to cool down and then put it through your normal sieve. Metal sieves, if you make a lot of jam or chutneys or anything like that, very, very useful, and I would recommend getting one. Right, so whilst that's happening, I'm going to put my butter. I'm going to mix my butter with my sugar. That's why I'm going to do a little bit of that. Okay, now you want to put your icing sugar in. And then your corn flour as well. I'm actually just going to use a spatula to mix this in a little first. Okay, so it should be quite thick at that point. And you're going to add your flour. Oh, actually, first of all, I like to add vanilla essence. This is homemade, which is why it's in a vodka bottle. I like to put about a teaspoon. This is a half teaspoon measurement. There we go. This is a half teaspoon measurement, so be generous. Mix that in a little. Right, and now you're going to put your flour in. Okay, so I just strained my raspberries. It will take them literally 5 minutes to come to boil and fall apart. So it's not going to take you very long. Now that you've strained them, you want to add your sugar, and then they just go straight back onto the hob. In the meantime, you're going to mix in, and this bit I do by hand because the more that you put in, the more likely it is to jump all over the place and you'll get flour on your face. So at this point I'm going to start using a spatula just to mix in your flour. It's a very odd sort of a texture because it looks, when you put the flour in, like it's going to be very dry, but it isn't. It's got a very smooth texture in actual fact, and it's quite incredible how much flour you could put in here before it started to get too dry. But yeah, the texture is, because of the corn flour, it's will stick with smooth, but yeah, that's how it's going to feel. Now I'm just going to, this is done. Right, now at this point there isn't a great deal that you can do because you're making your jam. So it's going to take a little while for your jam to cool down. So once you have made your jam, put it in the fridge because that's going to get it done quicker. However, if you've not made your jam but you're just going to use some out of the cupboard that you've already bought from a shop, that's great too. I do it myself when I haven't got time. So what you want to do is you're going to have a floured side. You just right now form a ball, because you're going to have two pieces. You're going to cut out a ring and you're going to place your jam inside, put another ring on top. Get a cookie cutter. Right, so let's see, what sort of size biscuit do we think we want?
Bigger one.
You're going to roll this out, and because it's butter, you want to try not to touch it because as it gets warm it's going to get floppy. It's very soft. You know, this is not like pastry. This is much more malleable than that. So you want to get it out to, well, I suppose however thick you want, but I'm thinking that that looks about right. And it's probably 1/4 of an inch. And like I said, you don't want to touch these too much. I'm going to put these in the fridge with a bit of cling film over the top, just so that they get nice and cold. They do better the cooler they are. Oops, see what I mean about being careful with them. If it's a cool day and you haven't touched them too much, then it doesn't matter. But if you want them to be perfect, you're much better off putting them in the fridge. And the best thing that you can do is put them in the fridge on your tray that you're going to be putting in the oven, because then you don't have to move them, you're not touching them too much, because these are the ones that are going to be going, you know, they're the bottom half. In the fridge with those. Okay, so these have been chilling for a few minutes. You don't want to leave them too long because they'll go hard and then you won't be able to sandwich the jam in between properly. You just want them to be, you still want them to be flexible, like, can you tell? In any case, at this point, my jam is nice and solid. Not solid, but you know what I mean. It's firmed up nicely. And you want to put a dollop in the middle of your first round. You want to put your second round over the top. And then you want to use a fork to pinch the sides together. You have to be a little careful with this. I like to sort of like pinch them together and use my finger on top to hold them down when I pull the fork out, because if you're not careful you can end up messing your biscuit up a bit. So be as neat as you can, because obviously you want them to look pretty at the end. You should also have your oven on at this point. You want your oven warmed to 180 degrees, because that is the temperature that I cook everything. Okay, so this is the finished article. A few tips and tricks. Once you've made up your jammy dodger, you want to put it back in the fridge for, say, 10 minutes, just to firm up again, and it will help when you put it into the oven, help it keep shape. If it does, they do sometimes have a tendency to sort of like spread a little. And if you want the perfectly round shape of a jammy dodger, then you just take the cookie cutter that you were using earlier, and whilst they're hot, you stamp the shape out again. You want to cook them until the edges start to turn brown, between about 12 to 15 minutes. And the temperature should be around 180 to 100 to 200. Look after 10 minutes because obviously you don't want to burn anything, but it's probably gonna, depending on the heat of your oven, is going to be different. I hope you give this recipe a go. They taste amazing. I absolutely love them. If you do, I'd really like it if you would tell me how they went. If you have any problems as well, I'd be happy to answer any questions. In any case, I hope that you try the recipe out. I hope that you enjoyed watching, and I hope you like and subscribe as well. But in any case, thank you very much for watching.